Welcome everyone. This is the Prescott School District Board of Education regular meeting. We have been in closed session since 5:45. I'll call this open session to order. Subject 1983 Wisconsin statutes. Our next item is to adopt the agenda. Rick, is there any changes on the
There are no changes.
agenda here? No changes, then we can take a motion to adopt the agenda.
A move to adopt the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
All right, motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Next item is Pledge of Allegiance. I'm sorry. Pledge of Allegiance. You can lead us, Vicki. That little first.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next item is the recognition of visitors, and the rules for this section are as follows. Please approach the podium one at a time, stating your name, municipality, and topic you'd like to address. A lot of time is 3 minutes per individual, 6 if you're representing a group that is present at the meeting. All comments should be directed to the board and not to other staff or participants. The board will not act on any comments that are made during the meeting. The presiding officer may direct the district administrator to follow up with that individual air date. And as always, public comment section will be limited to 30 minutes unless board action is taken to extend. Anybody care to be recognized? Protocol. I got to go through it. All right, we're going to move on. Next item is good news.
You're up, Katie.
Okay, I got a lot of good news this time. So the softball team has started playing, and they defeated St. Croix Central 18-8, with Leah French hitting her first home run of the year. The boys baseball team started their season off strong as they both won their games at the Lake City tournament this recent weekend. The indoor track season has ended as Andrew Russell repeatedly broke the school record for the 55-meter dash, and both the boys and girls team performed well. The musical Sweeney Todd had a successful production, as it was not only the longest production they have ever performed, but also with the biggest set they have ever created. The speech team came home this weekend with 12 gold, 6 silver, and 7 bronze medals at state. The R5 is having an open house night where they are showcasing the amazing projects and talents of students who will next year be acting as entrepreneurs and extending their tech ed skills to benefit the community. Spring Fling starts next week with dress-up days, an assembly, and the game Paranoia at the Prescott High School. And then what a lot of high school students are looking forward to is prom is next Saturday, with Grand March tickets still available for purchasing on GoFan. That's it.
Thank you, Katie. Michael.
All right, some good news. Mr. Igo reminded me to remind everyone, state testing is coming to an end. So that's some really great news. Just in time for AP testing in May, so good luck to our high school scholars who are in those AP classes. MPC Carnival was last Friday. The Malone Parent Committee raises funds on behalf of the K-5, our K-5 programming. It was well attended. We just want to thank those families who made donations, and then also those that attended and then bid on the baskets. And I'm excited. We have one excited kiddo to go fishing with me during lunch and recess. So that's one of the things I donated. And another kiddo was excited to be principal for the day with Ms. Dusick. And I know it's not a popularity contest, but it is, and she always gets a higher bid than I do. We have at the intermediate school, we have a few STEM trips coming up. So UW River Falls, Carrie Sizemore, and the Prescott High School, we do a STEM day for grade 4. So half the day is at River Falls, half the day is here at the high school, so we're starting to plan that out. And then always our culminating 5th grade trip is with, we've been raising brown trout in the classroom, in our STEM classroom, so Trout Unlimited. And then also Pierce County, we work with them, and we have a full day of outdoor learning. So looking forward to that. Just want to invite people to the intermediate and elementary concerts. They are on Tuesday, April 29th is the intermediate, starting at 6 o'clock here in the PAC Center. And then on May 5th, is going to be the elementary concert starting in the gymnasium. So come out and see the littles sing and dance and play instruments, and it's a whole production. It's not just a singing concert. So come on out and support the kids.
Thank you, Michael. One of the things, just wanted to give a quick update and good news is that the election occurred on April 1st, and no fools, we were able to have the two incumbents re-elected. Thank you for everybody that voted, and congratulations to Mike Matzik and Vicki Rudolph. In addition, we had one of our administrators who was just up here presenting, won one of the most prestigious awards that the state does present to leaders within the state, and Michael Kozmowski was recognized among 14 other principals in the state for outstanding leadership. It was a nomination that came from the staff. There was additional portfolio that Michael had to put together and some letters, and we just wanted to congratulate him and the benefit of the working with him among the administrative team, as well as with the intermediate staff, but also Michael serves as our K-12 teaching and learning. And it's been a delight to work with him over these years and watch him grow, but also I think it speaks highly of the team, the administrators that we have, and the teachers as we collaborate here within Prescott. In addition, Nicole Lenzner, who is the lead for our nutritional services, was awarded a $5,000 grant for a meal distribution equipment that will be placed at the high school and will facilitate distribution of breakfast at the high school starting next year. It's a $5,000 grant. We're very appreciative of her leadership and also trying to improve the program each year. Finally, I just wanted to share that yesterday was an immensely chaotic, but probably one of the best days that I had in the district. I think there's been a lot that has been accomplished over the last month, and we're hoping to see some of this come to fruition tonight and also on April 30th with the next work session that'll include an update and review of our benefits. So with that, I turn it back over to our board president.
Okay, thanks, Rick. We're going to move on to school business. First item is consent. In consent, we have the March 12th, 2025 regular board meeting minutes, March 24th special board meeting minutes, and March 27th special board meeting minutes. We have the finance report, personnel report for non-licensed staff, accept the receipt of Mike Matzik and Vicki Ruff signed and notarized official oath. Consider early college credit and start college now applications for summer session, accept the 4K new contract agreements for New Adventures, St. Joseph School, and Hard Hands and Mine. Accept the renewal lease agreement with Cab Company in Firehall Field. And finally, accept Neola School Board technical updates and changes for policy 168.1, meeting minutes per district administrator's responsibility.
And just point of clarification, did you do the personnel report?
I did.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything that the board would like to take out for further discussion?
Early college now, maybe? No, I'm just kidding. But I would say I looked at it and I'm super impressed with our students. That's such an awesome program that gives right back to our community, so.
My heart just about dropped.
I know.
I owe you dinner.
Mike, I don't want to pull anything out, Rick. I think you guys know this, but the revenue expense, the master summary report, just on the fiscal year to date percentages, there's just the percentages, it looks like there's an error. The dollars look right, but the percentage calculation looks to be something messed up.
Yeah, and on the reports, I did want to make sure that you understood that it did have, due to the two staff members that are no longer in the finance department, the February report and the March report. So you had both, and then there was an updated revised one for March. Nothing changed other than making sure that the tax revenue receipts in Fund 10 were booked, and those got missed, but it didn't change any of the percentages for spending or expenses. Thanks.
All right, nothing coming out of consent. I will adopt the consent agenda as presented. Are there any objections? If not, we're going to move on. The consent agenda is adopted. Thank you. And we're going to move on to personnel reports for licensed staff, new hires. You want me to just go right into this one, Rick?
Yeah, I'll let you,
After-
and you can look up at the screen and
yeah.
you can lead.
What has it been, 3 months of the search? 19 candidates, six interviews in the first round, and 3 finalists that spent the day in the district and got a chance to meet and be questioned and interviewed by many different stakeholder groups, including the school board's final interview with each of them. And we have selected our candidate. Jim Reef is graciously accepted the contract that we offered him, and he will be starting on July 1st, at the starting the new fiscal year for the school district. So we're really excited about Jim joining us. I think he's going to bring a lot of energy and different perspective on things here in Prescott, and I'm very excited. I think the board probably agrees with me on that. Does anybody else have anything to say about the process or about Jim in general? Tanya, you have anything you want to add?
No, I would say Mike and I have had the opportunity to work with him probably the last couple of weeks, kind of working through contracts and stuff like that. He's been great. He's been responsive. He's been really open to our suggestions and stuff, and it's been a pleasure to work with him, and we look forward to having him. Yeah.
Anybody else have anything to add? So we look forward to, Jim wanted to be here tonight. He had some obligations from his current school district in New Auburn, and he couldn't make it down, but he does plan on coming, I think, to the workshop on the 30th.
Yep, and he's going to spend a day in the district on the 30th as well.
Yep, and I believe he's got some vacation days to burn up, and he's going to be using them down here in the district to work with Rick, so as part of kind of his transition plan. So yes, very excited about the pick, and we look forward to having Jim here in July. So with that said.
Yep, then we do have one resignation that came in. Staff member that's been with the Prescott Public Schools for over 14 years, highly respected middle school science teacher John Wilnick has submitted his resignation effective the end of school year. There are no retirements.
All right. Any questions on anything, you guys?
No.
No.
All right. Somebody want to make a motion? Do you want to split this out? I mean, do you want to have Jim's motion separately, or do you just want to roll it in? Kind of feel, I just caught that. I didn't. Somebody want to make a motion to accept Jim's contract?
Yeah, I don't have mine pulled up right now. I'm trying to grab that wording if somebody else does, but I agree. I think we should separate them, one per Jim and then one towards our
Is that all right, Rick?
resignation.
Yeah.
Tom, you want to take a shot at the motion? We don't have it in writing anyway.
Oh, we don't?
So, no.
Okay,
It's gonna have to
good.
be custom-
Just wondering if it was
custom
me.
motion.
Sorry, that's my
Okay.
fault. I probably should have caught that earlier.
I move to accept the superintendent contract of Jim Reif starting July 1st, 2025.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I thought it was just me.
Tanya and
Tanya.
then Pat.
Yep. Excellent. Yep. And then we just need to accept the resignation of John Wilnick. Or we can approve the personnel report for licensed
I
staff.
move to approve the personnel report for the licensed staff listed above.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. All right, thank you. We're going to move to item C, consider nomination of board delegate for CSA 11 annual convention. This one could take a while.
I move to, I nominate Vicky.
Vicki, you good with being the CC 11
Yeah.
rep still?
Oh, for
Anybody
sure.
else want
For
in on this?
Want to go up and check it out, but no, I'm okay with going.
Perfect.
Excellent. Make a motion. Someone.
I move to approve Vicky Rudolph as the board's delegate for CC 11 annual convention.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Thanks, Vicki. Item D, consider PHS band trip to Disney World.
Where are you going, Mr. Figgy?
Early college credit program.
You are all ready. You had everything in front of you.
I wish someone would have just seconded that. All right, well, I think I've got this down to really just the title slide and the second slide, but if we need to go beyond that, we can. Every 4 years for, I think now this would be, boy, I think this is the 8th cycle. Our band has been going to Orlando, Florida to get coffee delivered by loving daughters. No.
That is so nice of you.
Wow.
Hi, Alyssa. Excellent. To go to Disney World. And I found out through kind of the music circuit that this isn't just a Prescott thing, that Orlando and Disney and playing at Disney and doing the workshop there and playing at one of their parks is really something that is iconic for most band programs nationwide. So this next year would be that next year that we would cycle through. And so the high school band is looking to get approval for an overnight trip, obviously out of state, for 6 nights, 7 days down in beautiful and hopefully sunny Orlando, going to the Disney parks. It is an educational trip, which I think some people lose sight of when you look at Disney World in Florida. If you haven't had an opportunity to go down or learn about the opportunity that our kids have, they do work in a pretty intensive 3-hour plus workshop with Disney composers and musicians in their professional studios. And it is extremely, extremely cool to watch, but it's pretty rigorous for the kids working with professional musicians and kind of honing their craft. And then in addition to that, the hope is always that through our application, we also are selected to be one of the few schools chosen to perform at one of the Disney parks or one of the Disney locations. So for a couple years now, we've performed at Disney Springs, we've marched at Magic Kingdom and Epcot, and so that's something that we would like to apply for, or we'd like to audition for. It takes audition video a year out to do that, but you don't get selected until 6 weeks or less before we go. So we have to commit to going before we actually know that we would get to perform. We did ask to pull this one out of consent because this is a little bit of a different iteration of the trip than it was the last 2 cycles. The first 6 times I think they went, they actually didn't travel, or the band didn't travel over spring break. They just traveled when it made most financial sense to families. The last 2 cycles, that has happened to intersect with spring break, and so our band has left the week previous to spring break, missed a couple days of school, and then been gone a majority of the spring break. This next year, because of some things that are happening nationwide with flight prices and what Disney's doing, the travel dates to go on our spring break are extremely high. Our tour director, who does this specifically for band groups to Disney, said we have the best opportunity, not only for the lowest price, but also the best opportunity to have to audition against fewer bands to get selected for the workshop and performances if we were to go in February. So we're actually applying for 2 February dates pending your approval tonight. And you can kind of see that below that blue line are some of the reasons why we did choose February. For our students and families. That cost of $2,300 would be the highest that it could possibly be if we travel in February, but our tour director believes that could go down as much as $500. If we were to travel over spring break, that $2,300 would be the absolute lowest our price would be, and it could go up $500. So we're trying to mitigate students missing some school on both opportunities. They would miss more school here traveling in February, but we would have more access for our families to go at that point. The one last thing that Mr. Smith and I have been talking about is no matter when we go, we do have conflicts with activities that are going on. If we go in February, that is potentially postseason for some of our activities. But in past practices that we've done with our band trip, we have and are able to do alternative travel plans for those students if they happen to make it to the postseason. If we were happen to go over spring break, that's the intersection of the postseason for other activities and the start of spring activities. So we were trying to keep all activities out because we didn't want to appear like we were prioritizing one group over another. Questions?
Any questions, board? Pat?
Just a couple. So it is possible, although the timing helps, that they are not able to perform or attend some of the music workshops.
The workshop the workshop we know we have already achieved.
Cool. Okay.
And that is probably, in terms of just pure educational experience, that's probably the best experience that our kids get.
Sure.
We will not know if we get to perform. We do have contingency plans.
Sure.
So if we don't get selected to perform at Disney, we have kind of standing agreements with like the Hard Rock Cafe that we would perform there and some other venues down there. So we would still get to perform, but Disney's kind of that iconic. We want to be on the stage.
Yeah. No, great. And then the 2,300. How was that per student? How was that paid for?
That's a good question, and some of the later slides don't necessarily denote how it's paid for, but what's included. So it's most meals, it's the parks, it's the travel, it's the hotel experience, which is on Disney property. A majority of that is a cost that parents or families would have to incur, which is why we're trying to, a year out, a little less than a year out. We do have some fundraising opportunities that Ms. Cornish and Mr. Canfield are working on for students, but those. We always want to be clear with families that you can't fundraise yourself to paying for a majority of the trip. That usually covers like charter buses to the beach one of the days, or a special meal that the group shares together. It's really not going to eat into that $2,300.
And that's been my recollection for years past, right? It's been planning for a year in advance and taking advantage of some fundraising opportunities.
Correct.
Okay.
And it looks like there's 5 installments kind of over throughout the year, so it's broken up for families and stuff too.
Correct.
The cost.
Thank you. That was it for me.
I don't really have any questions. I know it's exciting. I loved hearing about it last year, and they got to perform last year and stuff, so it's an exciting opportunity. My one question was the cost difference from year to year, and you explained that, so thank you.
So, and just as a throwback to kind of juxtapose what 4 years does, the trip cost last time was $1,850 per family.
Yeah.
So when we saw $2,300 could be the lowest we would pay in spring break, we felt like we needed to bring that down by any means necessary.
Yeah.
So hopefully, if we do go in February, it does come down below $2,000 to get closer to that last trip price.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
I have 2 questions. So the first one is, because it's not during spring break, is there, staff will go with you, so is there plans to be able to either modify the day here for people so you can cover it internally, or make sure that you have those subs and people can go if they want to?
Yeah, I think, well, on 2 sides of that, because there's a student side and a staff side. So anytime you take 80 students out of the building, we know we're going to have to modify what we're doing here, and we're going to have a year to plan for that, which is a great benefit for us. And we have had staff members who go in the past, so we'll work with everyone to make sure that we can cover or be creative in terms of sharing classes to make sure that's an opportunity they get to. Because it is it's a community feel that we want to have going down.
Second question is, I see the dates, it's now the 16th. The first date is the 30th. Is that a hard date, or can families, just so there's a little leeway for that first payment for families?
Oh, you're talking about the installment payments?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that was kind of the initial, we had asked for a proposal of when they wanted to start metering things out.
Okay.
They suggested as soon as possible, but we can control that within reason, right?
Sure.
They're gonna have to start locking things in. What they really want is just a commitment that people are starting to sign up and committed to paying for the duration of the trip.
Sure. Okay. Awesome.
Katie, any questions on this?
No questions.
All right, we'll take a motion. Thanks, Josh.
Thank you.
I move to approve the Prescott High School principal and band director's permission to develop, fundraise, and execute a band trip to Disney World in February 2026.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That one carries. Thanks. Next one is item E, consider a first reading of a new state-required school board policy related to early literacy and grade promotion.
Yeah, so I'm going to have Michael and Sarah available for any questions that you might have. Michael, if you want to walk through kind of the key elements as well. But as you know, this is the first reading, but we are required to have it by statute adopted before the end of the school year. That's why it's on, and it's up on the screen with the edits.
Right, so this is coming out of 2023 Act 20, which is a literacy legislative act. It's gone through a few renditions. Originally, it was any student who was not seen as proficient in reading in third grade had to be held back in third grade. They have loosened that up to districts can have a promotion policy, and then there has to be key parts of that promotion policy. So right now, we already have students on reading plans. Part of the policy is if a kid is not proficient on the Wisconsin Forward exam in reading specifically, we would have to have a promotion policy where they would have to stay on a reading plan as they went into fourth grade. Part of it is we'd have to have a school-based learning team that would help make this decision based on the student. The parents would be involved in the plan as well. You can see there's a few cross-offs. We felt that those were redundant of things that we would consider. Again, this really is based all around their reading and reading skills, so looking at their data obviously is something we're going to look at. The other things we also look at is the potential long-term adverse risks of retention, because there's been a lot of studies that show that retaining a student isn't necessarily a positive thing. So we really want to consider is that the best, and in some cases it may be the best. And then there are some exceptions under the policy and under the legislation, like if the student already is identified special education and gets specialized instruction in reading, they would be exempt from having to go through this meeting with this policy. So this really is talking about general education students or special education students that do not have a reading goal as part of their IEP would be put through this promotion policy. And really, the promotion policy, in the end, it just gives us more latitude to be able to move students on, but making sure that districts are still serving those students. And we already do a lot of this already. We already have kids on plans. We do have those transition meetings when we're handing them off from the elementary to the intermediate. We have Stacy Helders at the intermediate school as our interventionist. So these are all things that we already currently do. It's just in the legislation we have to have this as a policy. One of the leeways they do allow in the policy is that we have to provide for remedial summer reading. We've already done that. We've done that for years. We communicate with parents. We already have for this next summer of who we're recommending, and we kind of have a matrix of what are sort of our criteria. So some districts don't have that in place. We already do. So we have to allow that. The other part is that this policy, though by the end of June it has to be on the books, it doesn't have to take effect until September of 2027. So the recommendation from me and Principal Dusick is that we would have this take effect in 2027. And part of the reason why that's the recommendation is this next year we'll be doing our professional development around structured literacy. This is our first time. We've just been through personal reading plans one time. We haven't even made it a full calendar year around of what would that plan look like. Part of those plans, there are certain criteria at different grade levels of how do you exit a plan. And part of that exit in third grade is, again, being proficient on the Wisconsin Forward exam. Typically, we get those results in July. DPI is telling us we will get them in May yet to be seen. So part of it is the recommendation of why in 2027, if we're already doing it, is things change. The legislation has already changed around this. Will it change again as districts start to implement and say, this may be a barrier or some unforeseen domino that the legislation didn't see, and are they going to tweak it again? So that's the reason why we're recommending let's wait till the 2027. Again, we already do everything that's in this policy already. We're already meeting with families and communicating reading goals and where opportunities for them, both in school and out of school, and how can they get, what can they work with their kids at home. So again, we feel like we're doing this already, but again, putting it off would give us just that little bit more PRP work that we're doing, and then also that professional development.
Tanya, do you have any questions here?
Well, I want to be honest, and I could not access this policy. Mike, I see you have it up. I'm jealous of that, but I can't see it. So I didn't read it ahead of time. I did look at our policy 5410, which is in comparison to this one. Is there any contradictions, or do they align pretty well together?
They align pretty well together. So that one
Yeah.
is the 4th grade and 8th grade promotion policy. This one is 3rd grade. This one is specific just to literacy, though.
Okay.
So everything in here is about literacy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're not necessarily, they are not congruent to each other.
Okay. Perfect. That was my only question. I know this is the first reading, so I'll have to try to figure out how to get it. Yeah, thank you.
Courtney has it usually
Yeah.
password for all of you.
I
There's a
did
login, you
that,
gotta go.
So then you click it after you sign in.
though. Okay,
Yeah, do you
just
have
go back
any,
to signing in.
No, I mean, I read along, tried to follow along best I could, same as Tanya, wasn't able to read it beforehand, but I understand.
Okay, Vicki?
No, and we had discussed this last fall, I think, or last summer when we had talked about
Yep.
reading, and you had stated then that we already do that. We're already doing that. It's just, now it's gonna have to be in a policy, and everybody's gonna have to do it. So-
Formalized, yep, and uniform across the state.
Yeah, so that's great that you guys have been ahead of the curve, so that's good.
All right, Helen?
I read through the policy, it looks good. I think it's smart to wait till the 2027, and I have so many questions for the state, but not you. So, yeah, looks good.
All right, Katie, anything on this one?
No comments.
All right, thanks, Michael, I think we're good. We need a motion here for the first reading.
I move to accept the first reading of Neola School Board Policy 5411.
Yep, that's good, as is.
Second? Yeah, second.
Helen seconded it.
Second, sorry. Second.
All right, we have a motion in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That one carries. Thank you. We're gonna move on. Consider approval of the administrative and finance coordinator's recommendation to add technology, transportation, and the performing arts center, bus garage, and capital investments of our grounds as 2024-25 school year and future long-term plan to be eligible for Fund 46.
Yes, so as you know, we opened up Fund 46 as soon as we were eligible. We were able to tap into it fall of 2023 for the first time. As you know, Mike Koika uses this on an annual basis to give you an update with regards to capital investments within our facilities. You can see those. He's gone to give you installation dates and also lifespan of each of the pieces of equipment and what the estimate cost is at this time. Then we're going to be adding information about adding inflation and giving you kind of projected costs when these things come to end of life cycle and needing to be replaced, so we can manage our budgets well. Middle school, you can see, has been, the projects are on there, the elementary and intermediate. The high school. Then what we started to talk about is that we know that there are big ticket items that at some point Fund 46 is really a safety net. It's when your fiscal year within year budgets can't handle or plan for a cycle. So for computers, we know that we're doing computers every year. It's so that the budget is just being used at different buildings. However, there are going to be times where a server or a switch or something large goes out and we need to address it. So we did give this out to Matt Smith and the coaches
Adam Roll and Mike Hoyka, and we kind of identified big capital improvements that might be occurring at Borner Field, Fire Hall Field, First National Bank, and the track. We did internal, what are the types of things within our gyms, or, as you know, we have a new middle school facility in planning for kind of the conversion of multiple grades. Then we have the Performing Arts Center. If you think about the lights, the soundboards, the music room or control room, the bus garage, beyond just the buses, we also have furnaces and lights, and we wanted to make sure that we were covering that. And then with the bus fleet, you know that we have, and we'll be having a presentation later after this, is that we have a fleet of 19 buses. They cost about $143,000 in today's dollar, and we tend to replace one every year. We did take a gap year this year, and that was because of financial situations. By having and adding these to your Fund 46 does not mean that it gets spent and automatically comes out of Fund 46. It still requires board approval. It just means that it's eligible for that use. And our recommendation would be that you look at Fund 46 3 times a year. We would come back, or with my with Jim Reeve joining you, you could start to talk about, of the money that you have, what % would you keep in CDs that are fixed and ladder those? How much money would you keep in a high yield savings account? How much do you want to invest per year? And how much would you be able to take out on an annual basis? Those are really nice policy things to kind of put together. Tonight, all we're asking is that in order for our auditors to document, you have to have a resolution that approves that you're adding on the tabs that we just mentioned, the technology, transportation, performing arts, bus garage, and our grounds, so that it's in the audit, and then when you balance that in the future or are to make charges against it, you have that, you're in good standing. So, any questions?
Makes sense.
Vicki?
Nope, no questions.
Tanya?
I do have a question just about, so we have the athletics and the performing arts. Where does things like band and band equipment, is that falling more under like the school building one? Because there's a tab for that, or does that, will that fall under the PAC?
Yeah, so right now, we do have a fund for instrument repair. We do have some, remember we talked about the different budgets for assigned dollars, and what we typically have been doing is assigning dollars when the middle school and high school secondary teachers don't use all of their budget. It gets assigned for future purchases. So we ran into where a tuba costs anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000.
Right.
Many of the instruments last 20 years, and so it is kind of a huge bubble. So right now, the instruments, we have not put it into Fund 46. It could be a consideration. If you want to make a friendly amendment, you can add it.
Yeah, I just feel like, because I know that they are big budget items, I think they might fall under the performing arts maybe, or something like that.
I think it would be better to have it as its own, because performing arts, I would say, under that structure.
Yeah.
So if you want to add that as a friendly amendment?
I would like to add that as a friendly amendment. Do I
Yeah,
have to like more formally do that?
Before we do that,
Yeah.
are we 100% sure that it's legal and it falls
Yeah.
within the Fund 46?
Yeah, it just has to be capital investments.
Yeah, capital.
And so it has to last more than 5 years.
Okay.
And cost more than $5,000.
So it does fit the
Criteria,
Okay.
yeah.
And again, it's just kind of like emergency, like we'd
Right.
still kind of budget, but if something came up, I just know some of those are big cost items and stuff.
Okay. Yeah, we can add it to
Okay.
the motion. So this would be, what would be the correct wording? Band equipment or music? Like what's
I would say music instruments.
music instruments?
Does that work for you, Kyle?
Okay. Pat, do you have anything to add?
No, I understand, and the reason why we're doing it, I would, maybe sidebar here, I would love to see, and I know that Mike's been so busy getting done with with the work that's been going on. I'd love to see some progress on the spreadsheet as it relates to identified dates in the future and planned dollars, though. So that'd be really good. I see some of the recently added tabs, like I believe the bus fleet transportation and the technology is starting to get built out with estimate in today's dollars, future cost, target replacement cycle year. It'd be great to see some momentum with all the other tabs. Other than that, no additional questions.
Yeah, the roof, under the roofs, he's got information for scheduled replacement for the roofs, for all the buildings also. That's in there.
Yeah. Okay. But, and let me, that is, and I know we've talked about this before, but let's use the technology one. Just to kind of, for standardize, is what we're kind of talking about is that whether or not it's cameras, controllers, HVAC, it's when is something, capital project installed, what's the life expectancy, when do we see the target of when it would be replaced. We would look at today's dollars versus future. Does that look like a good template if we kind of standardize that format across the tabs?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So I'll work with them, and I think it's definitely something that can be, my guess is it's more a summer project.
Yeah.
But we'll build that out as the headers for each of these, and have it something for Jim and the board to look at in August.
Cool.
All right, yeah, good suggestions. Anything else? Otherwise, we can take a motion.
I move to approve the administrative and finance coordinator's recommendations to add technology, transportation, performing arts center, bus garage, music instruments, and capital investments in our grounds to Fund 46 as of the 24-25 school year and our future long-term planning guide.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Opposed? That one carries. Next
And just a
item.
quick inside note, so if you can make sure that you clip that in the minutes, send it to Kara, we'll be good with CLA auditors. Thank you.
All right, next item is consider the purchase of a new bus to add to the PSC transportation fleet via a 5-year lease.
And I'm going to ask Rick Montreal to come forward. As you know, Rick Montreal serves up here at the high school, but he also has taken on additional responsibilities that many of the administrative did have to do as we kind of reduce some of our staffing. He oversees the transportation and provides insight and guidance with Heather. And he is coming before you tonight to talk about, we had a gap year, and they've come up with I think, a wise plan in order to make sure that we keep safety and reliability of our fleet viable, and he's going to walk you through some of the slides tonight. I'll get there in a second there. Hang in there, Rick, but you can start.
Yeah, so last month we basically talked about kind of the status of our fleet, the number of buses, how the buses were being used, the number of buses that were kind of on backup. We walked through that. And kind of as we were looking at it and took the gap year of purchasing a new bus, Heather and myself felt like the addition of a new bus now moving forward for next year would be really critical. The question that Dr. Spikuza and I were trying to work through was how are we going to purchase that when a bus, as you heard earlier, ranges from $130,000 to $140,000. We started to entertain a lease option, which would spread out that cost over a 5-month period and make that what we felt would be more manageable. So as we talked about that, and then the last slide that would be added to the slide deck would be what that exactly looks like to lease a new bus on this year's calendar, on this year's budget before June 30th. And so the key points are up there. The bus that Heather and the bus garage really prefer is a Thomas bus. The current cost of that is $131,384. When I talked to the bank that would be our lease partner, originally about a month ago or so, we had a 4.6 rate, and now that's dropped to 4.26 for whatever reason. Call us lucky. But it did knock off a significant chunk of change. The interest over the 5 years still amounts to $11,701. But I think that bottom line number is that each loan payment due in June would be $28,617, and that first payment would happen this year in 2025, and the last payment then in 2029. Adding up the numbers from the loan amount to the interest, we're at $143.85. And in talking to both the bank and the bus company, Nelson's, they're all ready to go. So in terms of like when we would get the bus, we could have it as soon as 2 weeks from now, as long as the bus, Nelson's, and the bank merge, and they're ready to go. So I guess we're coming to you with that information, and any questions about what was just presented, free to try to answer.
Helen, do you have any questions here?
No, I don't actually.
Vicki?
No, it's the leasing, being able to absorb those payments, I think is much easier than outlining the cost of a full bus. So I like that you guys continue to look at this and figure it out for us. And yeah, it's nice to see that we have options, which is good for something that costs so much, so.
Yeah, really no questions. We talked about it. I remember we talked about, do we just outright buy a bus or if we're going to go to leasing? And it looks like the recommendation really is to go towards that leasing. And so makes sense to me. It's great. I know we were also considering selling, I believe, 1 to 2 buses. And so.
Yeah, we just sold a bus yesterday,
Perfect.
actually. It doesn't exactly put a dent in that number.
I know, because I was surprised at how low. How much did we sell it for?
A whopping $3,050.
Yeah, yeah.
And if this goes through, we would be looking at another one as well.
Yeah, perfect. So, yep, it looks great to me. Yeah, thank you.
Pat?
Rick, this is a lease, but this is the intent is a lease to own program, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
okay, that's
Yep.
part, okay. And then not, I unfortunately missed your presentation last
Yep.
month, but the type of bus, is it in line with, I know Tim used to talk about, we need to be able to wrench on things and fix things, and so is it in line with the other stuff that we have, and are we able to service and maintain the bus that we're...
Yeah, it
Okay.
is. I think Tim was actually involved with
Okay.
this because he's over there quite a bit. I couldn't speak to it, I guess.
He was hanging out of the bus garage.
But with Heather being the former driver in her position now, I felt really comfortable with the Thomas bus. They wanted a flat nose. We couldn't get that. There was a lot of discussion going back and forth.
Yeah.
They are getting the bus that they want.
Okay.
As far as like Heather being in charge over there, and then Aaron, the mechanic, working on
Yep.
stuff. This is exactly what they asked for.
Okay, thank you, good. All right, no other questions, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, the math makes sense, especially with the price hike on just buying. I think that wasn't always 131. That price jumped pretty hefty here in the
That was
last
like
year. didn't it?
95 or
I
something.
thought a couple years ago,
Yeah,
if
I
I
thought it
remember,
was
Tim
around
was about
100,000.
109 maybe?
But I mean, you could run 4 leases at one time, over the 5-year period and still be cheaper than buying a bus. So,
Yeah, and we
with
had
that
talked
price.
about that, and maybe that's getting out there too far, but there's some
All
ideas
things
with how we
equal,
handle it.
right? I mean-
Right.
So that's, yeah, I mean, this makes way more sense at this point. So I think good job on doing the homework. Anybody else have anything before we take a motion?
No.
Yeah, all right, let's do it.
I move to approve the purchase, I move to approve the lease of a new bus to add to the Prescott School District transportation fleet via a 5-year lease, there you go, beginning as soon as possible. At an, I can't see the words now, you guys.
An annual principal and interest payment of $143,085. I know,
Somebody put some words over the motion, so I apologize for that. Mike, you want me to repeat it?
You go ahead and repeat it, Pat.
All right, I move to approve the lease of a new bus to add to the Prescott School District transportation fleet via a 5-year lease beginning as soon as possible at an annual principal and interest payment of $143,085.
I'll second.
I'm gonna just nitpick this, and if we're
Because
okay
it's not,
with it,
because
because you changed the word lease,
Yeah.
purchase to lease.
yeah.
Which is changed on here now.
I mean, is it clear that we're purchasing the bus?
Well, how about,
about a
put
lease to
own,
purchase?
the way that you phrased it, lease to own.
I got another nitpick on here, too. We say at an annual principal and interest payment of $143,000, that would not be correct.
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 Of a total principal and interest payment
Yes. Total principal and interest.
instead of
payment.
annual.
Yeah.
So now amend.
Third time's the charm, let's do
amend
it.
your Motion.
All right, let me give it a shot now. I move to approve the lease to own of a new bus to add to the Prescott School District transportation fleet via a 5-year lease beginning as soon as possible at a total principal and interest payment of $143,085.
I'll second.
All right. We do have a motion in a second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Strap pack.
Struggle bus
Carries.
is what that
Sorry.
was.
Rick, you get to stay, because
Yay.
now that you got the bus in hand, what do you gotta do?
Yeah, item H.
We gotta sell a bus, it's you. You,
From the transportation
I
fleet.
thought we did just get rid of a bus, so there's a second part. So I talked today with Heather. Right now, we're trying to kind of offload the bus we just sold. She knows, and we know what bus will be next on the auction block. So all we have to do, I guess, is go through the same process, which we've done now a couple of times, and go ahead and list that bus whenever we're ready. I would say we need to get rid of the first one. It's like only a week window, but once that week expires, if you're okay with that, we would just put the next one on.
yep.
All right, anybody want to make a motion here?
I move to approve removing a second bus from the transportation fleet and using the required auction site for the disposal of public property.
Mike, I got a question.
Okay.
Do we need to, so we said that we're approving removing a second bus. Do we need to approve the first one?
No,
The first one had already been
we
approved.
It already
talked
been
about
approved.
that earlier.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, thanks. Then I second.
Good question. Good question, and Pat did second it. Motion in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Thanks, Rick. We're going to move on. Item I is consider standardizing a referral program incentives for support staff and including paraprofessionals aides.
Yeah. So one of the things that Chantel has been working really hard on is trying to standardize and make more things uniform within the HR department. In working with a Lara group, coming out of the recommendations after part of the job study is also about retention, but also recruiting. And so one of the things that we have, but not well communicated and not well known outside of some of the groups, is that for our support staff, we do have a referral bonus. And so what we did is looked at the amount of money that we were providing as a bonus, and we noticed that it wasn't the same across the different support groups, and the longevity of how long a new hire had to be with the district varied. So Chantel, Marty, and Alicia Schwartz with Alara came up with a standardized option. Currently, we do provide this referral bonus for all 4 of the groups, although when I shared with our administrative team and some of the staff, they weren't aware that it does apply to 100% of Prescott staff. So if a custodian finds a bus driver or a superintendent, they can't get it. But if a custodian finds a teacher all of that is fair game. So what we're trying to look at right now is we tend to recruit from our community. We tend to have a better network when we include all our staff in recruiting. And so this was to standardize that it would be a total of $500 maximum. First part would be, it's not just that you refer, it's that the referral ultimately gets hired for the job, stays on at least 8 weeks, and then if they're on for another 16 weeks, there would be an additional payment of $200, and then a third period of 8 weeks is 24. 24 weeks is about a year round for school district, and the maximum amount of money that the person who is the referral would receive is $500. Over the last 3 years, this has been executed about 6 times. Earlier this evening, you just accepted the retirement of 2 of our bus drivers, and bus drivers are very difficult to locate, and we are currently hiring 1 custodian. So this is the right time, I think, to, 1, make it public, know that any employee can help recruit somebody or refer, and that the bonus is eligible for anyone. So this would be standardized across the 4 groups. If approved, I would be working with Andrea and Chantel to get it out on our email system to the staff, and then I'd be meeting with each of the supervisors.
Don, do you have any questions or comments here?
I do, actually. So we talked about this a little bit at our work session. I believe that was last week. And so, great. I didn't realize the differences amongst them all. This makes total sense. I'm happy that we're going to standardize it, and honestly, it adds to kind of the longevity that we're looking for with our staff. One of my questions was, you mentioned that this is something that anybody within the district can refer. So we have this for support staff, and that's because those are hard to fill positions. So like a teacher might refer someone to be a bus driver, now that we're hiring that, and the teacher would still get that. Okay.
That is correct.
And then, do we currently have this in place for any hard-to-fill, like licensure areas within our licensed staff or anything like this?
Not at this time, and I think that's what we would be coming back to you later tonight in the presentation that recaps the work session from April 9th, but then when Alicia Schwartz is with us on the 30th, of looking at what are additional benefits that we want to look at.
Okay, great. That really was my only question.
All right, Pat?
Is this, Rick, is this something we're going to add to the handbook, or what happens with this policy?
There's nothing, well, it's not a policy, it's more just a administrative practice.
Yep.
We would first give it to every administrator. I'll have it circulated out among the email, but it would be a great thing to have added to the handbook.
I guess one of the reasons I ask is, and you brought it up too, that the superintendent isn't eligible, but I would assume that anybody responsible for the recruiting and hiring of staff is not eligible for the referral program.
Right,
Okay.
and there are some.
But it doesn't really say that here.
Yeah, so there's some business rules. Remember Marty during his presentation?
I do.
We did put in here that there would be nepotism guidelines, as well as it does not include substitute teachers.
Right.
Part of this is that if approved, Chantel would kind of put in writing what the administrative business rules are, and bring that out to each site.
All right.
Perfect.
But I don't think we considered, so I will, I do think it'd be wise to get it into the handbook, because then you would, it'd be a one-source place where it could be seen.
Okay, thank you.
Vicki, any questions, comments?
No, that was where I was headed with it, Pat, was where is this going to be at so everyone has access? And yep, the handbook is the best place to have this information.
Awesome. Okay. All right, looks good. Take a motion.
I move to approve standardizing our referral program incentives for support staff and including paraprofessionals and aides.
Second.
Who got the second?
this?
Let's go Vicky. I felt Vicky.
We'll go whatever. Pat wants a second, you can have it. All right, we have a motion and a
care
second.
less.
All in favor?
I really could.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Last item, I believe, is item J, and that is consider acceptance of Health Partners, July
This
1st,
is
2025.
exciting.
Renewal rates for healthcare and dental premiums.
Well, remember I said in my kickoff that it was an exciting day yesterday. There was been a lot of work over the last 6 weeks to kind of bring some of this to fruition. Chantel wasn't able to be here tonight, but I wanted to just thank her, Sean Fitzgerald, who is our broker, and obviously working with Alara, just kind of setting this up. We received excellent news with regards to our rates, with regards to the renewal. They are up on the screen. I'll increase it so everybody can see, but it is rare in today's world that you would see a decrease in health insurance. For the second consecutive year, Prescott Public Schools is receiving a discount in its premiums, both for individual and family. We're seeing a decrease of 2.5%. That means that our premiums are going down for individuals from $911 to $888 for individuals, and just over $2,000 down to $2,015. Dental is a little bit different, but a very nominal increase. You'll see that our premiums were under $60 this year. They'll go for individuals up to $60, and then family it's $160, and I'll move to $165. What is the impact? That means that there will be cash back in our staff. These rates go into effect as of July 1st. You'll see that for the district, it's a savings on healthcare of about $56,000. I do preface that with an asterisk because you don't know whether or not people move from individuals to family. As people come in, somebody might not have had insurance, but in general, it mitigates the increase. We had a cap of 12%. So Health Partners, even though we had caps, which protects us from a huge increase, has come in based on usage. A lot of it has to do with some very difficult decisions the board made earlier, and we're starting to see the payoff. The other thing I would like to share is that 2 new benefits are being added. Health Partners is adding, and don't quote me on the exact name, but think of it as a My Health Point card. It'll be a reward card for employees that have health insurance. And as long as they are participating in some healthy choices, documented healthy choices, classes, or behavior, they will receive dollar amounts. It'll go on this debit card. The maximum allotment is $275 per year, and it is not required to be used on health care. So that $275 can be used in any way, shape, or form. In addition, Chantel is really happy to announce, and we'll be talking about this, about all of our benefits on April 30th in a work session, but she's been working with Lincoln Financial Insurance for individuals. More than 50% of the population do wear some type of glasses, sometimes bifocals down there, or contacts. There will be insurance that will cover or give allowances and discounts on staff who are eligible for contacts, frames, and lenses. This will be at no additional cost for our employees. I don't think we could have expected, given some of the trends out there, such positive news, and it's about time that Prescott got some financial positive news, and really happy with the outcome here. So overall, the increase for an individual will be $1.44 over the fiscal year, and for family, it would be $3 for the year, plus the savings that they'll have on healthcare. This also covers any of the individuals some of our retired teachers who were on the health plan, they also will see that decrease.
Vicki, you have any questions on this one, comments?
I don't have, I guess, really questions about this one. This is, I guess, the best comment I have is like, yay, it's gone down again, which is amazing. I think that's super helpful. Give us a little bit of relief this year, so.
All right, Helen?
Yeah, I think anything that we can decrease is good.
Right. Tanya?
Well, obviously, it's really great news. Last year it was about 5%. This year it's a negative 2.52%, which is really, really great. Well, we talked about a cost savings of about $56,000, but really on the flip side, we were anticipating up to a 12% increase. So it's really like a $150,000 swing there. So it's really great news for us. And I want to just add that the reason why our rates went down, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if I recall, it was because of our staff and some of the choices they've made, kind of healthy. It's just us being healthy as a staff and not having to use as much insurance, right? So then when that...
Smart uses of it.
Smart uses of it. So when that goes down, all of us really benefit from it. So that's one of the reasons why I'm extra excited about the $275 My Card plan, because it's just really educating and giving opportunities to practice healthy lifestyles, which help all of us and go towards those lower rates in the long run. So it's a win-win, I think, all around.
Yep, Pat?
No questions, great news.
Yeah, great news. Thanks, Rick. We'll entertain a motion here.
I move to approve Health Partners July 1, 2025 renewal rates for healthcare and dental premiums for 2025-26.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. That was good news. Information discussion, teaching and learning update. I only mean one person. There can be only one.
Oh, the advisory committee.
All right, two updates for tonight. I know it was gone last month at the board meeting, but Human Growth and Development Committee, Advisory Committee, we met on Tuesday, March 11th. We have another meeting scheduled coming up here. We have 19 people that are part of that committee, and we had 16 of them at that initial meeting, so it was a great turnout. Fortunately, not everyone could attend, but tis the life of balancing many schedules, as we have found out trying to schedule our next meeting. If you go to the next slide, Rick, just as our full committee, again, some staff that we had there, Amy Krause, our district nurse, was there. Our teachers, Mr. Hanson, Ms. Potoff, and Mr. Schwick were there as well. And Mr. Figge was there representing the admin team. We did some activities together in a BTC type of way where we paired up in random groups and we looked at some district policy and state statute. And we reviewed sort of the purpose of the committee and what their role is. And Rick, if you go forward. So one of the things that we use from Teamworks a lot is this graphic on the right of, we want stakeholder voice and input, and that's really what this advisory is for. And then giving that input to our options team, which is our Prescott School District teachers, and how do they develop the curriculum in conjunction with our school nurse, and then ultimately the choice makers being the board. So we talked about state statute and how the board has choices of do we teach human growth and development or do we not? And if our board has voted that we will teach human growth and development, well then there are certain requirements that come along with that, topics that must be taught. So we really spent a lot of time reviewing that. Of what topics must be taught, but the flexibility comes in, when do we teach them, how do we teach them, and those things. And that's where our teachers have developed that curriculum. So really it was introducing the group to that, and then this next meeting will be really diving into that curriculum. So now they've had about a month, maybe a little bit more, to look through the curriculum. So all the curriculum was provided, all the slide decks. We do have outside organizations that come in and talk to our students, including Pierce County Health. So all of their activities and things were shared with this group. So now they are shuffling through. We have a shared Google Doc where they can enter questions. So that way when we get back together, it's more meaningful conversations. Our teachers can be prepared to talk about or maybe even bring some activities and have them do some of the activities that we do with our students. A couple of the takeaways that we had from that night was that the state statute really identifies the topics that we must cover and how they are covered to some extent. Also, the advisory committee is really here to provide their feedback of how can we change our curriculum, areas that they feel would help them as parents, and then also resources. So one of the big things that came out of that conversation was we talked about some of the tenets, some of the things that we believe is that teachers are the primary educators when it comes to human growth and development. We'll do our part, but parents need to also. So what the parents had expressed was, it'd be really nice to have, besides for the letter that comes home and says you could opt your kid out, but then also here are some resources to help you as a parent to have what sometimes can be a very difficult conversation with your own children. So I think that was a big positive that came out of that. And that our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, April 28th. Again, we're going to review those curriculum questions that we've had coming in. We're going to do, again, some small group activities to try to gather their opinions of ways that we can strengthen the curriculum. And then also, are there other areas that maybe we don't delve into that they feel would be appropriate for us to add into the curriculum that they see as parents. So most of the people on the committee, again, are parents. We do have a few clergy on there, a few just community members, but a lot of them, I'd say nearly half of them, have experience in the medical field. So it was a really high-level conversation. And then also with some of them working in different departments around, is they also are a great resource for us, and our teachers are making those connections with them of how can we have them either come into the classroom or resources that they provide that we can be using. So it was a great first meeting. The goal is we're going to have the second meeting. After that, part of that is make sure that they understand the curriculum and then gather some of their input. Probably have a third meeting one of the things talked about is how do we take all that and then kind of decant it for the board. We'll probably use some AI to help us do that, which we commonly do, so you'll get the full set on the backside, but then sort of what are the high points that AI pulls out as well. And I'm not sure if that'll be at the May board meeting or the June, but shortly we'll have that for you. It depends on how does our next meeting go and how much more work time do we need together. So that's human growth and development.
Do you guys have any questions for Michael on this one?
No?
No? Don't hear, no? Okay. All right, thanks, Michael. Next one.
All right, and then our next one really is more Act 20. And along with Act 20 is structured literacy and our move towards structured literacy. So sort of by the numbers here, so we have Act 20 training. Again, Act 20, we have about 13 different choices for that. We've kind of narrowed that down to 1 or 2 different modules that we'll be using. And then we also have this reading guru group led by Sarah Dusick that will be helping to facilitate that professional development. We figure that's going to be about 40 hours of our life next year is going to be on structured literacy. We also need to look at a resource adoption, and it's more than just, well, let's get some resources and let's pilot and see how we like them. It's really going back to that, what are our priority standards? The standards were updated in 2020. So let's go back and reprioritize them, unpack them, repack them, DOK, thinking classrooms, wrapping that all together before you start to select. That process, we predict based on how long it took us with math the last time we did a big overhaul, is probably going to be around 60 hours of work. So we have about 100 hours of work around literacy that's looking at us. Current professional development days, all that time is about 48 hours of professional development. So that's less than half of what we need. We also have some mandated training every year. We have some planning time. We want to give our staff planning time in their PLCs, but also individual planning time on those days. We can look at collaboration Mondays. If we look at one Monday a month, we already use one for building thinking classrooms, and we can pair some of the structured literacy work with the thinking work that we're doing. That gets us about 13 hours. We already have K-5 teachers. They have a common prep, which is great because then they can collaborate and they can PLC, and that's just part of the fabric of what we do. So we already do that 2 days a week at minimum on the PLC. Sometimes it's more than that. So we could look at, do we add a third day where, again, they wouldn't get that individual time in their classroom to plan and prep. It's more of this. That would give us some more time as well. But even if we add that all together, we're still going to be short. And that's really on top of everything else that we do. So you can go on, Rick. The first thing, just the training requirements. So again, this is a mandate by DPI. DPI originally had money or legislation had money for this, $50 million. However, that got held up in court, and it sounds like it will never find its way to our school districts, but the mandates are still there. So starting by July 1st, we will kick off with our 5K through grade 3 teachers, and really we talked as a district of 5K through fifth grade teachers, adding those 9 extra teachers to that professional development. Might look slightly different at the 2 buildings because it is required K5 through grade 3 for their licensure to have a certification. We don't necessarily need that at grades 4 and 5. However, we know a lot of our special education students and our teachers at grades 4 and 5, they are working with students that have reading abilities that are much lower than grades 4 and 5. So we want to have them fully trained as well. However, having Mr. Matzik in 5th grade work on phonics with 5th graders, we're probably past those modules. So there's some modules that we'll kind of gloss over for our 4-5 instructors, but then there's a bulk of them that they will follow through the same training as the elementary building as well. So we've got that required mandate of training. If you go to the next slide, Rick, we have...
Can I ask a question on this one before you slide? It says that it needs to start and finish on the same. Is that July 1, 2026, or am I reading
No,
that wrong?
it's just, we have to start by July 1 of 2025. You know, we could
Okay.
use a 2-year model for doing our professional development if we wanted. There's
Okay.
no end date on it. It's just you
Gotcha.
have to start the training by then.
Okay, so they didn't give us an end date.
No.
Okay.
Yep. So we're kind of
Gotcha.
imposing on ourselves 1 year because we really we've waited on
Yeah.
adopting a curriculum resource to get this training because none of our teachers have gone through a training program around structured literacy. It's always been around balanced literacy. So as the pendulum shifts now, we're waiting for that and being intentional.
And
I
I don't want to interrupt you, but I also just wanted to share for the board is that this has been really complex and delayed legislation that's trying to be implemented. I wanted to thank the work that Michael and Sarah have done. We had an after-school meeting. We met twice with the admin K-12 to talk about many different options around professional development. As Michael shared with you, the amount of hours is double what we even provide within the school year. And so we thought about even changing and coming to you about changing the calendar. What I do want to share is that was up there, and they have, by working together, principal, teaching and learning, and the teachers being able to sit there and have them come to the realization that they're working on math adoption and reading, and there is no district that tends to do that in the same time concurrently. And so what was great was for the staff to say what they want to do, but then say it's nearly impossible. But they came up with a plan together, and Michael's going to kind of share with you what that's going to look like. But I wanted to just recognize the teachers, the PLC leads, and Sarah and Michael's collaboration that is rare many times.
Okay, so if you go to the next, so again, we already have this teacher leader team with Sarah already doing the Keys to Beginning Reading. Next year, we're considering, do we stick with the Keys to Beginning Reading, or do we do some work around the Cox Academy Structured Literacy Program and pull in those parts of Keys to the Beginning Reading into that? One of the reasons why we're looking at both of those is there's a financial cost to the Keys to Beginning Reading, about $800 per person, where the Cox Academy is an open-ed, free online. So can we do the best of both worlds where we can still pull in where Cox Academy might not meet our need? Can we pull in the Keys to Beginning Reading? There also have been times in Keys to Beginning Reading that they don't necessarily meet the need either, right? So it's sort of like curriculum. There's no one thing that meets every need. So again, we're going to look at those facilitated conversations and then meter out that professional development. Again, like Rick said, we met with our PLC leaders to get their opinions on this because we could try to pair these both together, or is it wiser to pull them apart considering all the other things that we were doing? But this we will kick off in June, and this will be the primary work of the 25-26 school year will be this training. And if you go on, Rick, then the other big part is that resource adoption. So we adopted formally Good Habits, Great Readers back in 2013. That no longer fits the needs of both our teachers or our learners in reading and phonics and in writing. And that's why we've already done phonics work. We adopted Foundations a couple of years ago. After that, we did some writing work. We did the priority standards and aligned what are our priorities in every grade level based on the 3 different types of writing. And now we're at the reading. And even though that PLC leadership team, even though we're chomping at the bit that we really want a resource in front of us, we really need to know what are we truly looking for in that resource. So we looked at this before anything Act 20 was even talked about, but the pandemic delayed that. It delayed that again when we started hearing about the Act 20, but then also when we started doing our phonics work, because we knew we couldn't wait any longer. So we started the phonics and the writing work already. There's currently 6 different curriculums that the Early Literacy Curriculum Council, which is through legislation, this council that looks at different resources. Every year they update the list. There was 4 of them on there last year. They added 2 more this year. There was originally a funding option up to 50%. However, again, those were part of the funds that got held up in Madison in court, were never released to districts. They now do have a process to apply for, and you will only get funding if the legislation decides to put that as a priority again in their next biennium.
I got a quick question on that. Are charter schools or private schools mandated to do this? Or is it just public schools?
Charter schools are
Charter schools are
public.
required, their requirements are slightly different than ours, and their timeline's a little different, but private schools are not part,
Obviously
are not part of this at all.
Charters are?
Charters are, yep.
Okay.
All right, so Rick, if you go to the next one, again, resource adoption, about 60 hours. We got to look at priority standards, we have to scope and sequence, we got to unpack, repack that, sort of those questions of a PLC. What do we want kids to know, and how will we know if they know it? What will they demonstrate to us? What will we do if they aren't meeting the standard, and what will we do if they are? And then unit designing and piloting. So you can see it's a lot of work. That's also in addition to that building thinking classrooms that we're doing, the math work we're currently in, some of the phonics that we're still tackling. So when we met with this group, and again, it was across the K-5 building, that group came to the conclusion that it's probably best for them, best for their PLCs. Now, again, this is a highly functioning group, the go-getters, right? So there were a couple of them that are like, yep, we can do this. We can do 100 hours worth of work in 84 hours. And as we talked our way through it, and some of the staff that had been here when we went through the math adoption, talked about the process, and we needed to have these really deep conversations that are meaningful because what we choose in one grade impacts another. By the end, I think they even though they may not have liked the delay, they understood that we needed to delay. So originally, again, like Rick said, we met as an admin team. We talked about if the choice was that we need to get going faster and it's 1 year, the secondary principals did talk about, do we look at a schedule change to add professional development at the elementary level? What would that look like? Impacts on families and things like that. We had already started to have those preliminary conversations, but once we met with them, it was clear that this was the path that was best for us in the timeline. So that's where we're at. We're going to have a 2-year process to get there, but we also believe we'll get somewhere better by doing it this way.
Awesome. Anybody have any questions or comments here?
I got a question. So when you're looking at the resource adoption process and you're putting 60 hours on it, how many staff members does this include? And I guess what's the grouping of staff members? Because all of the teachers need to be trained, but are all of the K through 3 teachers going to be involved in this, or is just this, you're picking, this is that group of PLC leads and?
It's a both and, right? So you need some people to, it's sort of like when you come to a meeting, if you have an idea on a piece of paper, it's a lot easier to pick it apart and point out, areas that could improve versus from thin air, let's come up with something. So typically the way that we do this, like the priority standards work, is we have a grade level rep. It may not be the PLC leader, but a grade level rep from each grade level. This is what we did with the writing, and they did some of that priority work, and then they took it back to their PLC. So we kind of trained them on priority standards, the real process, get them to a good level of understanding, and then they take it back and they do some of that work during collaboration Mondays and PLC time during their common prep. Then we come back together and we work again as a small group. So it's this accordion of going out and coming in, going out and coming in, but eventually we're all in the room together. And when we've done this before, we have all of our standards up, and then we have different colored Post-it notes all over, and we look at, okay, this standard everyone wants.
Yep.
And this standard no one wants. but we need to cover all the standards. So again, that scope and sequence work is some of the hardest work that we do, but that then really helps us understand what are we going after in this resource. So it's an all and some at the same time, because it's difficult to have that much dedicated time with 35 staff members at one time. It's just really hard to do that. We can do that on some PD days, and we will do that, but a majority of the work will be done by a smaller. Yep. And then the other part is sort of the methodology that we're going to use then to do the pilot. Will it be all 3 or 4 teachers at a grade level using every single different curriculum and getting trained to high levels? Or is it 2 at each grade level, using each of the others? I know some teachers will say, I want to try all 3. And sometimes we have to save ourselves from too much work as well, right? Because that does come with training and also the look-fors and things like that. And sometimes everyone wants to have their opinion heard. But again, when you have two working on it versus 4, you still end up usually at the same spot. So that'll all be part of the process of what's the methodology also.
Any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. I think spreading it out between 2 years is a good idea. I think I've done the reading training, our own, and it's tough, so it's gonna be a lot on teachers, and that's hard, but for K3, so.
Nobody can hear you.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. That's good. He can hear me.
She's talking about the professional development and the modules being a long, tedious process. You saw it's over 30 hours, and that's best case scenario to make it just through the modules. And then that's really not where the learning comes. It comes from those conversations, those facilitated conversations that Sarah and that team are going to do and lead us through activities. That's really where you're going to make the impact in the classroom.
Tanya, anything?
Yeah, I like the 2-year model. My school district's doing the 1-year model, and it's super overwhelming, to tell you the truth, because from a leadership lens, it's hard because you can't do anything else. Like, it's almost like everything else is on a pause except for literacy, which literacy is very important, but there's other things that are also really important. So I like the balance of the 2-year model. I also think you're not burning anybody out. You're able to ingest the material, use the. I mean, it's a great model. I do want to just caution, which you had shared, and I totally understand you're just sharing by the numbers, like all the times that we could actually fit this in, and it was like kind of putting everything out there, not that we're going to use everything. I just really want to caution using collaboration time, because we prioritize that for really time to work with about students, to plan on interventions, and we worked hard to get that time in for teachers and stuff and for staff, and I just don't want that to become kind of a meeting or a training or something else that we're adding. So that's just my only caution with that, is to keep valuing that time and allow it for staff to have.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No additional questions, thanks.
Thanks, Michael. Yep. All right, moving on. Last item in info and discussion is the update on the Alara job study on April 9th.
So the board, we've been putting you through the paces, selecting a new superintendent, having a lot of meetings on that. Now we're moving towards fruition with regards to setting up a model with regards to closing the gap with regards to financing for our compensation packages. First, there's salaries, but then there's also benefits. And so on April 30th, we do have another work session scheduled for 5 p.m. and I'll be here at the high school in the media center. At that time, it'll be kind of part 2 with regards to kind of how the overall packages come together. And I'm going to try to do a quick summary. I would feel free to chime in with regards to just your reflections, and then there's a couple clarifications that Kara and I would like, so that we can start putting Prescott dollars to these models and then be able to hopefully signal out to the staff what their salaries would be for 25, 26, both to recruit, but also for when we're trying to hire staff, they know where they would be, but also before staff have wandering eyes, that they know that they'll be, we know it'll be higher, but how much higher? So understand that Alera came in, they did break it into 6 sections. I thought it was really well done. There's been a lot of give and take. We were on a conference call yesterday finalizing some of the things. Kara and Chantel from HR and Finance have been part of these. Again, they aren't here, but they are definitely, their fingerprints, voice, and leadership could not have gotten this far without their participation. So we're looking at compensation. Marty did a really nice job about talking about policy and practice, trying to make sure that they're aligned. Engineers sometimes say it works in theory, but we want to make sure that it's working both in theory and in practice. Employee benefits, we mentioned that that'll be done on April 30th. We've had employee feedback surveys. We talked a little bit about recruiting practices. We've updated some of the information both on our website, tried to beef it up with regards to graphics and graphic design so that it's easily seen, easily maneuvered. We also have earlier tonight approved kind of referral bonuses. We've looked at some turnover data and then obviously external benchmarks, and that's what we're going to try to focus on tonight. As you know, we just talked about that referral bonus earlier tonight, so I'll skip through that. We initially started with 31 school districts. It's trying to figure out what is the deck of cards. We looked at CISA, Middle Border. We also had a Key 5 that included some Minnesota districts, and we looked at Hastings, Red Wing, and South Washington County. We included Hudson and River Falls. Regardless of how you decide, it's very similar to the Dow Jones or Consumer Price Index. Economists, in order to manage and report out on what inflation is, they create a bucket of what is the current price of certain goods and services. They monitor that across time so that you have a standardized metric that you can compare to. It's not necessarily the end-all be-all. It's not about perfection, and when the Dow Jones and a company no longer is a good indicator or bellwether, they delist it and bring something else on. In CPI with the economists, they'll do the same thing. I think it's really important, though, is that we can't keep switching the goalpost. We know, based on the information from heading into the year, but more importantly, we now have empirical data that shows us what is the gap. But the only way we can close the gap is if you define for us what the goalpost is, and then whether or not how much time it'll take. Very similar to what our educators are very familiar with is a SMART goal. Identify what amount of annual growth is necessary within any curriculum. If I'm behind grade level, then what's the additional growth that's necessary? And Marty provided you information about having 2 variables, and we'll talk about that. Our discussion, I thought, was really intense. It was very helpful to kind of talk about what's included and what's not. This goes back to the bucket. And so out of those 32, know that you had directed us to, we had learned that for some reason, one of our neighboring districts, Ellsworth, hadn't complied with our request. So Friday when I was up at CISA, I made sure that Brian Nadeau was able to turn over Ellsworth's pay scale. So it is good to go up to CISA every once in a while, right?
Well, and I was going to say, I had learned I found out on Thursday that they were just finishing up all of their information, so, to bring it to their board, so.
So what's nice is we were able to include them, and then also you had asked us to add River Falls. Some of the guiding questions or discussions that you had was, out of the 32, we did have Minnesota districts. Do you guys want to share a little bit of how we kind of started to land on that this would be the category, with or without River Falls, and how we got here from the 32? just your discussion about kind of, you guys kind of set some criteria.
I can kind of summarize a little bit and everybody can add in. I think we all felt that the Middle Border Conference was a pretty important key point for us, both because of kind of that recruitability piece, but also the retention of our staff, wanting to keep staff here. That's a really big comparable. We use they surround us, we see them all over, we go to their schools for athletics and activities and stuff like that. But we also wanted to really identify schools that we sometimes see our teachers go to, or schools that are actively recruiting our staff, and that meant River Falls needed to be included as well. And so we included River Falls. We kind of ruled out places like Sawashko and Hastings and some of the Minnesota schools for a couple of reasons. One, a lot of our staff don't go there because it's different licensures with state and stuff like that, so it's a little bit of a harder challenge to go there. But also, to be honest, we can't compete with those pay scales. We have a different funding system. We're in a different state. It's funded really differently, and Prescott happens to be the bottom of the state's funding anyway, so it's just almost put us out of a competitive spot that we could even compete with those districts. So I'm happy that we got Ellsworth's information, though, because that was a key piece that we were missing that is really close to us and, our neighbor essentially here. So anything else when it comes to how we chose these?
Maybe one other point with within our vision, our mission and vision, we have for recruitment and retention. I think one of the metrics is that we want to be, how we want to be stacked up against is through the Middle Border Conference. We felt like the Middle Border Conference is kind of like at least that's the baseline, and then because of River Falls and their location, we wanted to add that in. So I just wanted to call that out too.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so this is Marty's work. You can see in black, it just designates where that school district falls. And then obviously, you can see the new benchmark group. So that became the metric of analysis. Remember, we met on the 9th and it's the 16th. Had a conference call with him yesterday. Now, instead of having 8 to 32 bar graphs, you're down to 2. We have cardinal red on the left representing Prescott, and the green is the Middle Border plus River Falls. So you have 8 districts. Typically, you don't go below 5, so that if there's one outlier, it doesn't create a huge swing. As you can see, there is a gap at both levels. On the left-hand side, we're looking at the starting scale for a bachelor's, and then all the way through, and then also for our master's level. The gap is slightly different for our bachelor's. It's about a $2,100 gap. And then for masters, you can see it's about a $4,700 gap. Presented in a different way, if you just look at kind of a histogram and it's kind of a horizontal, green is compared to the Middle Border and River Falls. You can see that we're about 5% below on the bachelor's and about 10% on masters. It's important to note is that 50% of our licensed staff are in the bachelor side of the scale, and 50% of our licensed staff are on the master side. So now, obviously, in theory, right, we want to talk about how far away are we to a known identified group, and then how do we close that? Then you have to start putting dollar signs to that. One thing that we did notice is that the distribution of where staff fall on BA versus masters is that, and this goes back to some of the relicensure issues, is that currently staff do not have to take college classes to be relicensed. More of our senior staff previously did have to take college classes, and therefore it was wise for them to move across and get, the more credits you get, you can get a master's. And so you'll see of our population, a preponderance of the staff that have a master's are also at the higher end of the scale. So this will create some impact when you start to look at how this will impact the overall budget. Thank you. All right, so then we looked at 2 things. We would have an indicator of on a SMART goal, it would be, what is your annual typical grade level growth for a fifth grader from fall to spring? And we're going to call that the annual increase. Understand that the annual increase, if it was based on Act 10 and we had a organized union, we would be restricted to CPI. That CPI indicator is 2.95, and those districts can't go above it. In this case, we're below. We're not proud to be below, and our goal is to remedy that. So the first thing is the annual increase. We had been modeling this since the beginning of looking at a referendum of about a 3.5% increase. That would likely, at this time, obviously be above inflation. Based on my meeting with CISA 11 and the 41 superintendents, it would not necessarily be the highest, but it would be towards the higher end. Many districts, and I shared with the board, a couple other districts are coming out with 1.2, 2.5 annual increases for next year. So again, that's only one part of the metric. Then it's how do we close that gap? As I mentioned, the gap was 5% for a BA and 10% for masters. When you put that onto our current scale, which is represented here, and the dollar values, and move everybody up a step, it would be about $260,000 in 1 year for a bachelor's and $500,000 for masters. This is just 1 year, and then that resets the bubble. That overall is about $760,000.
So if we, and this is if we did this all in 1 year.
Correct.
Right, so if we did this all in 1 year, we're looking at adding about $760,000 to the budget. That carries over every year. We already added that on, it's built now into our budget. And the following year, it would be roughly, right, give or take a 3.5% increase on that 760, which would be another, what, 400,000, or, I mean, it would be quite a bit. Okay.
All right. So it's important for us to kind of know where we are.
Let's just write out.
Do we have the right goalposts? And then what are some of our options? But as Marty said, his presentation was somewhat given to you in a vacuum, right? And so what I did want to do is just remind the board and the community and our staff, and as we kind of walk through this, our goal, and we've talked with Tracy, is that we want to get out to the schools, share what the goal is, or has been identified, what the dollar figures are, and whether or not we're trying to do this in 1 year, 2 years, or multiple years, and how that would play out. But you all are aware that we do not have funding identified for next year. The legislature is currently meeting, and so this is right now just the headwinds that we're faced with. We currently are scheduled to receive $325 per student next year. Understand that that is currently at the Supreme Court. We are hopeful that that decision on the use of a line item veto is upheld. If it is struck down, we lose that $325. Then it would have to go back to the legislature to decide, are they going to give us $325 or more? Understand that they have come out, and the Joint Finance Committee stated that they are not going to take up any educational funding discussions until May of 2025. So one of the headwinds you have is that we have built our budget with the 325. Understand it is somewhat precarious, but I think it is in keeping with the use of the vetoes historically. At the time when we were making this slide, the healthcare was supposed to come in at a cap of 12%, and wow, we got really good information, and it came in at negative 2.52. So that is some cost savings there. Again, it's a 1 year cost savings, but I would highly recommend that we roll that right into salaries as soon as possible. It also may alleviate the burden for you to go out for an RFP for healthcare. It gives the superintendent the first year to get a better understanding of other things, and we can talk about that on April 30th and then likely in early May. But here are some of the true possible headwinds that we're facing. Prescott Public Schools has declining enrollment. It is the lowest enrollment in over 15 years. That decrease is compounded by that recurring operating levies. The 1.2 is put on the base. So it's not a guaranteed 1.2 million, it's based on your enrollment. It'll be wonderful when enrollment stabilizes and goes up, but as it continues to go down, you are not getting the full value of the 1.2. In addition, you know that special education costs more than we are funded. Presently, Sandy has worked with Kara. We have shaved off $100,000 of that cross-subsidy. That was remarkable. I don't think we can shave much more in the special education. That population is not decreasing. And special education staffing is typically individuals with masters and are higher cost. That cross-subsidy is $1.7 million. Our hope is that there are many proposals, both from advocacy groups, the governor and DPI, asking for increased money at special education. That'll be your first tea leaf. If there are bipartisan recommendations for special education funding coming out of Madison, every dollar that comes for special education is a dollar that goes back into Fund 10. So it's an indirect way of monitoring whether or not Fund 10 is going to be increasing, flatlined, or decreasing. Downside is that you have looked in, and we've been pointing out that food service, Fund 50, currently is not cross-subsidized, but we are operating in the red. As of the end of the year, we will expend through any fund balance that it has, and based on statute, it cannot be in the negative. We are looking at having to cross-subsidize $111,000 next year, so that is something that is a challenge, and obviously, we will not be able to generate revenue, and there are going to be additional cuts that you're familiar with, and some discussions that we're going to have to talk about operations and consolidation. Other things with regards to technology and why technology was put on Fund 46 is that federal money called E-rate, educational rate, is that we get about $30,000 per year for all the equipment that Andy buys for our district. That is sunsetting, and I would be basically a snowman in a hot room to tell you, I do not believe you're going to see E-rate funded at the school level, but maybe. And then, obviously, the Department of Education is being redistributed. They are the ones that oversee title dollars. We receive about $70,000 for all our title programs, from intervention to mental health aid and things like that. So that's another $200,000. So those are some of the challenges that we're going to be faced with. This is a pictorial graph of our enrollment. Remember that you are funded on the last 3 years. So we are, the peak was in 2021, but you can see that we are dropping closer and closer to 1280 at this time. Our projections right now show that we are graduating more students than are enrolling, and so our high school population will be under 400, maybe probably closer to 370, but we'll see. And then early 4K enrollment is about on par. I think it's looking at, was it 70? Sandy, or Sarah, do you know, 4K, are we about 70? Yeah. So again, about 30 students per grade less than when I first started a decade ago. Then one of the second most important things, we are gonna see our per pupil aid go up, but per pupil aid is based on this, right? And so we're gonna have more money for every student, but we have fewer students, okay? Also, the situation that we're in is that our per pupil aid currently is at $11,400. I'm rounding up, it's $399, but it's $11,400, okay? That puts us at the lowest 4% quintile of educational funding per pupil. So that is the constraints that a consultant doesn't have. That's the constraints a board has, right? That you know based on where you are. We will migrate closer to the middle based on the operating levy supported by our community. But it really is, in the grand scheme of things, going to mean that your revenue for 25-26 is going to be really close to the revenue you received this year. So as we make decisions, you have to realize that revenue isn't going to be coming higher. And you know that more because you've been vetted and steeped in this. But I just wanted to make sure that you had the information so that you can kind of walk through that. And so, Pat, you had asked on the 9th about per pupil aid. This is where we stacked up previously. You can see Amory, Somerset, Altoona, St. Croix are all above us. They will continue to go higher. The only thing that will change that will be based on any of our operating money that goes on the base. We won't have that information until early summer. Okay? So I'm going to go, any questions with regards to just balancing the needs of where we are, but also understanding some of the limitations that has us where we are and what it might take to rectify that.
So many.
Questions.
It's always.
All right, so there's hope. There's hope,
Lots of
right?
questions.
So one of the things that I think could happen is rather than try to, given that you're in a biennium funding cycle and there's enough headwind, my recommendation, based on after hearing Alara's presentation, is rather than trying to swallow the apple all at once, is that a multi-year process is probably the best. It would allow you then to, one, have fiscal numbers that I think Kara, myself, and Baird could confirm that is conservative but aggressive, meaning that aggressive to start to provide an annual and a gap increase and give you the flexibility to do both, but not put you at risk of overshooting. And then once you have hard numbers, you can always make an adjustment for 25-26, or you know that you have more money for the second year, okay? So this is what that looked like. This is Middle Border and River Falls. This is one of the ways where you could look at year one, and year one would be, in this case, fall of 25-26. We would look at our pay scale. We would make sure that the annual increase for all licensed staff at minimum is 3.5%, and then we would have a gap increase. At this time, these are just preliminary, and I know that one of the biggest challenges of putting numbers out there is this is a template. This isn't a proposal. It's something that would say, take the 5% and cut it into 2 years. You can do it in 3 years. You could front load or back load, right? There's many different ways that you can put that together. But as a starting point, you would have about a $200,000 increase to your financial budget for almost making our bachelors whole, because they're not that far behind. And then masters, it would add another $306,000. That would make a dent in, but obviously we know that there's further to go with masters, which would mean that you have a second bite of the apple for 26-27. Remember, we're trying to get to 2029. That was the whole goal, and maintain your fund balance. And so, as a proposal, one of the ways is that you would add the numbers going horizontal. So the first year would be about a $500,000 increase to the budget. If this is something that you're leaning toward, now I can start to work with. We do have it set up so that you can change those percentages, and we'll see in real time. But we just have to get our hands around two things. Do we have the right metric, Middle Border and River Falls? And then, are we looking at trying to do this in 1 year or multiple years? and I'll just pause there to kind of get a sense of, is there anybody, just like we did with the teachers, do you think we're trying to do this all in 1 year? Is that even feasible? And if it's more than 1 year, I'd like to just hear some discussion or direction.
Anybody want to jump in first, or? Let's
Well, I might just
talk
throw-
about the groups first, or what do you got, Pat? Go ahead.
Well, when you said groups, what groups? I'm sorry,
Like
Mike.
so Rick's question is about, like, are we benchmarking against the right schools? Is it Middleborough and River Falls? Do you think that's right?
Sure, we can talk about that first. I do believe that, and that's what we talked about in our workshop, that those are the right schools. And you could argue, one of them or two of them, maybe don't belong, but it was important to bring River Falls into the mix, and we did that, and I'm comfortable with the group.
Anybody have any other comments on that? Because I think that was pretty straightforward.
No, I'm pretty comfortable with the group.
Yeah.
We had a conversation about it, we're seeing the results. I would be comfortable no matter what the results said. That's the group we went with after discussion.
Okay. Yeah, so I think we're good on that. Pat, did you have something that you wanted to add here?
Well, I was just going to start, you asked just to kind of start comments, and I would love to be able to tear the Band-Aid off and get there right away. I think, given some of the things that Rick presented, and the fact that we still need to address the, amongst other things, the 3 or 4 building district, and we need time to do that. Right now, we know we have to do something year one. It has to be more than just COLA, and this 2-year model would provide that and provide us with some time then to make other operational decisions, if necessary, to reduce cost in order to make year 2 a reality. That's it for right now for me.
Yep. Tanya, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I agree with Pat. Honestly, I just did the percentages, and roughly, if we were to just take off the Band-Aid and kind of calculate it out for the next handful of years, it's adding $25,000 to $30,000 every year onto that. And we quickly, I don't want to say price ourselves out, but we're using 80% of the referendum dollars very, very fast. And staff is by far our priority, but we also had other priorities too that we had to do. And so one of those being not depleting our fund balance, and we had to get our fund balance back up. And that's something else we have to consider is, like, we're gonna, let's say we add $500,000 to our overall budget, we also, by policy, have to add more money into our fund balance than we had the year before, because it's about how many months we can operate. And so between those yin and yangs, and I think that's what you would kind of play out, I just don't know if we could get to year 2029 safely. We would be at about $850,000 just in the increase in pay scale here by 2029, and that leaves very little increase that had to go to into our fund balance, and it does not account for all of the other acceleration with interest, with just everything, inflation and everything else going on. It doesn't account for anything. So I think this is the much more responsible way to do it. And I guess I also, the thing I absolutely do not want to do is to get stuck in a spot where we overprice and now we have to freeze.
Right.
I don't want to do that ever.
Yep. Vicki, you have anything?
Yeah, over multiple years, I think is the way to approach this. I agree with, we need to get something immediately going into this next year. What that looks like, I'm not exactly sure. If we just hit that 2.5, we've got a lot of funding things. We don't know if we're losing title dollars or not. That's a number then that we have to absorb into our budget and figure out where that's coming from. So that could be our healthcare savings goes to pay for what we lose out there. We're hoping the 325 stays and that we're good with that until we find out how that goes. We can't make a big jump and do everything at once. We do have a lot of planning that we need to look at for cost savings because we know this is where we want to put the money. So we need to pay our staff. Our licensed staff needs to get right with other districts within our district. So I think that is going to take a little more thoughtful planning for year 2 and maybe year 3 or 4 going forward. So we do have, I think, a lot of work ahead of us. And there's just a lot of other things I think we just need to explore. We need to explore how we can get more revenue coming into the district, how we can attract maybe more students, if we can do something more with our facilities. So I think we need to do something. I'm okay with year 1. I just don't know that we just automatically build in year 2 and say, yep, here we go. I think we need to do some planning for that year 2 and make sure that we have everything covered, especially if we lose federal funding.
I think we said it all. I think going the 2 years is the most responsible, but I think it's going to be, we're going to have lengthy discussions because I think teachers are going to be thinking they've been waiting and they've been out of whack for a while now, and so they're probably thinking, well, another 2 years, but really, we do have bigger discussions to have, and they're going to be really hard ones. We've talked about, our buildings and all that other stuff, but I think at least starting and trying to get them equalized with the middle border and River Falls, even though it's really hard for me. But I think that makes sense. It does. Yeah.
And honestly, this is a minimum if we do this for the next year. And I know this is a discussion item, this is not a decision point. That's a minimum of a 6% increase. I don't know if I've been on the board where we've had that. Mike, have you? I mean, it's been a long time. And then the maximum is an 8.4 increase, so. Right, so this is something that we're able to do this year. I'd like to look at, I think it's absolutely what we should do the following year as well. But I know that there's a lot changing out there with how education's being funded, and I think there's a lot more to come that we have to consider.
All right, Rick, so you had so the benchmark on the schools, Middle Border and River Falls, we're good with that, and I think we're all agreeing that it's a multi-year process, at least 2 years,
Okay.
But, I think we'd be interested in seeing some options on that too, what it would look like. The other piece of the pie that we have, the piece of the puzzle that we have not discussed yet, and we're going to be discussing on the 30th, is benefits. And we know Prescott has good benefits. So I want to call that out because if you're going to go apples to apples on salaries, you have to try to compare benefits as well. So I think there's a big conversation. I'm excited to have that data and see how we stack up against other districts, and maybe how does that play as a whole for the district in comparison with the Middle Border plus River Falls. So I think there are options there, and some are long-term options. I think some are going to involve lengthy discussions and input from staff. So, but I think for tonight we got what you wanted. We gave you what you needed. So I think we're good.
All right.
And just to back up again, can you go back to that last slide? Because you mentioned this. This is a template. This is not in stone. Rick called it out. I want to call it out too. That these are numbers that we're looking at here, but nothing is set in stone. Even the dollars on the the 3% to the 198 to 214. So I think it's a good view. I like this view. I think it's important that we have something to look at like this. But it's certainly not set in stone. So, thank you, Rick.
All right. No, I appreciate, and what now I can work with Marty and Kara is that we'll start to lock down Middle Border River Falls as our goalposts. We will start to look at our overall budget with Baird based on new parameters that we have and forecasting, and then be able to come back with you with more than one scenario. And like I said, is those boxes, if you remember, that Marty has set up is, if we have to go from 2.5 to 2, we can quickly give you what that will impact and share. It sounds like for year 2, both on just modeling or even saying it's kind of blank, but understand, and I just want to be clear, and I couldn't be more proud, is that you realize that there are some challenging questions yet to come, and that there's not enough with falling or decrease in enrollment, that there will be some cost savings decisions, cost-cutting decisions that are going to be required. But I think it will be for the benefit of maintaining your staff, allowing that the funds that are preserved to be put into salaries and retention, and not have staff jumping across 4 sites, to be honest.
So I got another question for you. Something that we had discussed a little bit at our work session was Michael was working on, with a group of staff, on coming up with what they could do to make that internal adjustment.
I can't remember the
With-
initials. PDP group.
PDP.
Oh, yeah.
With, was it 9 people?
Yep,
I think they identified?
Correct.
So does this help them at this point to kind of get an idea of
Well,
what they're?
that's going to have to be, I mean, they still would fall on the salary and get this increase, but there's got to be something unique for that in addition
Right.
to.
There is
Right.
something
Yeah.
to
So
that.
there is overlap, but yes, they have a doodle calendar went out. They are working under a guiding change. We see that as a separate investment to rectify that challenge, but obviously there's only one.
Correct.
Dollar,
So
right.
to fit that into what we're,
That's why I'm sharing, is that the sooner we get both of these kind of moving forward, if we want to be able to have it in the budget for 25, 26, the sooner we have real numbers, the better. So this was very helpful. They now know that they're kind of on the clock to come up with some things, and then that's the trade-off, right?
And I guess one of my, it's 9 people, one of my priorities would be to not right-size them over 2 years, but to figure it out
right.
for them
Right.
sooner, you know?
Yep. And then, just a reminder that we will have that work session that starts to talk about, rewards, the presentations. It's not tentatively scheduled, it's now confirmed for the 30th. But to Mike's point, one of the things that is really hard is that trying to compare benefits across districts is a little bit more challenging. Not only will Alera share what they've been able to compare, but they'll also talk about different ways that you can set up healthcare plans. What are some ways that you can have cost savings in your benefits and retention or non-cash rewards that can go a long way. So I think that's a benefit. Also understand that our 403B match, when WRS came in and spoke to our staff, it is one of the rare districts that does do that match. It is an additional up to $2,000 for staff. If they're contributing they have $4,000, but the district outlay is $200,000. That's an added budgetary financial investment in our staff. The HSA with the high deductible, we tend to be on the higher end with the $1,750 and $3,500 contribution. We took the numbers of individuals that are on individual and family and mapped that out, and that's another $375,000. Goes to your point, Mike, that it's both salary and benefits. That's another $500,000, $575,000. So as we look at trying to put a package together, we know that we'll be meeting probably twice in May if we're going to try to have something in place for by June. But that's kind of our timeline. I appreciate the feedback and the work that you've been doing, and hopefully we'll have more insights as of the 30th.
All right. I think that wraps up info and discussion. So we are on to recognition of visitors. Anybody care to be recognized? Please do so and approach the podium. Same rules apply as the first.
same rules, so I only get 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Are you speaking for a group?
I'm speaking for a group,
Then that changes.
but I'm not going to need, I won't.
3 minutes.
Okay, my name is Tracy Budworth. I'm an employee here. I am also the district representative for the teachers union. So as a person who's been employed by the district, we know that we are very appreciative that the district is looking into the pay, the compensation, so very appreciative, thank you. It is, we kind of feel like it's important to look at the gaps that are in those steps. And then one of the questions would be if you're also looking at whether all the employees are on the appropriate step and lane before you go any further with making a decision. And then finally, if any discrepancies are noted, are you going to try to rectify that before you start making those other changes? And that would be it. Okay.
Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Can anybody recognize? You got those questions?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. All right. We are moving on, and the board will consider a motion to convene in closed session under exemptions 1985 1C in room A117 here for 4 employees. So we need a motion for that, and probably a time to tie to the motion or the time we start.
I move to go into closed session at, let's say 8:25.
Yeah.
25.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to go into closed session at 8:25. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. We'll resume at 8:25. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.